Wednesday, everybody. Second half of our South Florida Tribune Broadcasting Network doubleheader. We had the real and the rare. We promoted a couple of books on there. And now we're going to go out there and talk about some real sports. But I want to welcome J.B. Ellis back. This guy has been out for the last 4 weeks. We managed just fine without you, but we managed a whole lot better with you, Mr. Ellis. Welcome back to the big show.
Thank you. What's going on, everybody?
You've been everywhere. What? You've been to Indianapolis, been to Vegas. Where else you been, Ellis?
That's enough. It was a long month. I'm feeling the effects of it. I missed last night's sideline sports. I had a fever. I wasn't feeling too well. I slept most of the day today. I figured let me tough it out here. One show for the week I think I can handle. But I'm telling you, it was a rough month.
Well, let me tell you something. When you're out in Las Vegas and you have to deal with a show with anybody that's not King of the Hill, then in my opinion, they could go out there and say, way downtown, bang. Okay, and that's what we had to deal with. But you know what? Like every professional in this industry, as Ernie Harwell would say, when we're back together, we are long gone. Okay, so there we go. So not King of the Hill, but long gone in the eyes of the beloved Ernie Harwell. So J.B. Ellis, welcome back to where you belong. Okay. And the guy that didn't get time off for good or bad behavior is a guy by the name of Jacob Christner, a pundit, but not tonight. He's at the Sports Exchange.
JB, we missed you saying, listen. We missed that a lot.
The voice of reason. You got to listen. You got to listen. It's important.
Good to have you back, buddy.
I was doing my best to try to impersonate you, Ellis, is what I was doing. And I was getting some pretty good feedback there. I got that old voice where, we could go out there and imitate J.B. Ellis to get that old, it's like COVID-19 a long time ago. If you weren't there, get the cardboard cutouts, whatever. But it's nothing like, listen. And after all, I'm wearing the Army shirt. You know why? Because it said be all you can be. And that's what we do on these shows. And last but not least, Mr. Sports Exchange, we go back a long time. George Eichhorn.
Yes, a long time ago. And welcome back, JB. Good to see you again, Jacob and Scott. Looking forward to tonight's show.
All right, well, tonight's show is should Richard Sherman lose his Amazon Prime gig, and that's where we're going to lead off with it tonight. Just to let everybody know, though, that the Sports Exchange being broadcast around the world, I'll get to a lot of specifics later because I don't want to lose you. But just to let you know that the audio version of the show, if you're on the subway, your bikes, whatever, can be heard on iHeartRadio, Apple, Spotify, Google, wherever you get your podcast. Please hit the red subscribe button on YouTube, South Florida Tribune. We're striving for more subscribers. Please also comment, like, and share the broadcast. More in a moment. So with that said, Richard Sherman arrested on suspicion of DUI. Should Amazon Prime retain his services? Mr. Ellis, you get first crack at it since you're back.
So I'll be honest with you. Honestly, everyone should lose their gig because I don't have one yet. I mean, the pecking order should be J.B. Ellis and then move on down the list, and then from there we can really decide. So, but that's the way I look at it. And I don't really want to work for Amazon. I'm not a fan. I'd rather, maybe CBS or Fox. I don't want to do ESPN. Too cliche. Ralph, what's going on, man? But listen, I don't know. This whole thing about people losing their job for stuff outside of work, I'm not on it. Listen, you do what you do. As long as it doesn't affect me, I'm okay with it. I'm not okay with what he did, but who cares? He's working to talk about football. Are we watching him for any other reason? Is he going to teach me about how to be a good human? I'm not watching Richard Sherman for that. Watching for him to talk about football. Besides for that, there's probably nothing else I really want to talk to Richard Sherman about. I'm not asking him for, recipes for cakes. I'll call Buddy for that. I'm not going to ask him for betting advice. I'll call Raphael. I'm not going to ask him what the weather is like in South Florida. I'll call you, Scott. I'm not asking him about Detroit. I got George for that. So, I mean, he's going to tell me about football. He knows football. Man's a smart guy. That's it. People take too much stock in this whole, what happens off outside of the workplace and everything, that's up to the bosses and all that. I could care less. It's not my place to say.
All right, Jacob.
This is 3 DUIs. I'm gonna be with JB, and I'm not gonna say lose the job, but please let's start getting an idea of what this guy's problem is, and especially with alcohol. One should be enough. One. And it's like you get yourself an issue. You have an issue and plus the fact we have Uber. I was an Uber driver 5.5 years. We're out there all the time. Why do you continue to think that you need to drink and go home? Drive yourself. I'm not going to say lose his job. He knows he knows football. He knows the talk. He can do all this. But quit being stupid with drinking. You can go get Uber. You can drink at home. But you're a dang teenager. You're acting like a teenager. It's like, I'm going to keep doing this. I don't care what kind of sickness you might have with alcoholism, but do it somewhere else. Right. Because eventually, regardless of what we say, they're gonna make their own decision anyway.
George?
Yeah, this is a tough one for me because he's a public figure. He's in the public eye. He's a former athlete. He's a big supporter of the national pastime, the National Football League is. He has to be judged probably the same as anybody else would be judged, even though he is on a bigger platform, meaning Amazon and the NFL Network. I think he should have at least a suspension involved in this, but again, I'm not the judge on this situation or the jury. But no, he has been warned. He has faced charges before, and if you're in violation of those charges, then you have committed another crime. That being said, I still think Amazon Prime would be wise to suspend him, but I don't know if it'll happen or not. But I think he should serve some time away from the TV, away from the NFL for a little bit, at least for what he did.
All right, let's put Candy Ebling's comments up and I'll read them verbatim. Okay, first of all, Sherman in 2022 pleaded guilty in Seattle to misdemeanor charges stemming from drunken driving and domestic disturbance the year before. He also admitted to a criminal infraction of speeding and a roadway construction zone. Serious stuff. What does his contract say? You know what? I'll tell you what, when it comes to alcohol driving, I don't like it. Many years ago, when I used to go to concerts, if a lot of my friends and family wanted to go ahead and drink at the Palace of Auburn Hills, I was a designated driver. So all I'm going to say is, to me, I think there should be some disciplinary action taken. After all, you're putting yourself in front of a lot of people. You have to show at least a decent example of you just can't do DUIs. You just can't do it.
Scott, I agree.
I think it's a bad example. It's a bad look, Joe.
No, I agree with you completely on that. But at the same time, there's obviously a reason for it, as Jacob said, and just throwing him away and saying you're fired, that may actually hurt him more. You have to kind of find the reason. It's not the employer's job to do that either. But at the same time, that may send them off a different cliff and make it worse. And it's never good to drink and drive. There's never an excuse for that. But again, I don't think it affects his work. We're not looking at him as a role model. We're looking at him to explain football to us.
Right. Well, I agree with your philosophy. You should explain football. The one thing that we can't lose sight of, Joe, and the rest of you guys, is it depends on what Amazon and Amazon Prime's policy is towards this sort of behavior. If they're saying that it's a universal behavior across the board, then maybe you start off with a suspension. If the behavior persists, maybe the second or third offense and he's out of there. And those are some really great areas that we have to understand. But either way, you have to set a good example if you're out there talking to a lot of people. We've talked about many weeks ago about the validity of Carissa Thompson, whether she used to go ahead and do erroneous reports that didn't exist where she had to fake it till she make it. And that was a bad thing that ultimately went away. And I like Carissa, don't get me wrong. I have no problem with her. But you have to understand where credibility is amongst the audience. And that one went away. I like Carissa, don't get me wrong. And obviously she came out with it later. So why? And then that obviously set a bad example with the sideline reporters voicing out against her. But this is something very, very, very serious. Okay. Drinking and driving. How many deaths do we lose? You know, we dealt with some schmuck here that wanted to go out there and deal with suicide prevention. Okay. And I say that to a specific age group. And I say that when I talk about different aspects of the whole thing. But I confronted this particular individual saying, shouldn't apply to just a certain age group. It should apply to everybody. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not asking anybody to comment specifically on the subject. I'm going about it on my own. Okay. So I want to make sure that people totally understand exactly what we're dealing with. You don't single out anything out there, okay, that you feel is limited to a specific kind of situation is what you don't do. You have to treat everything objective as what you do. And again, I want to point out that the opinions on this network are strictly of those individuals that are saying them and not of the other crew members as well. So I want to make sure that that's perfectly understood to everybody out there. But as far as DUI is concerned, you really take it seriously. And not only that, if you go around the world here, a lot of countries take it differently and they lock you up forever. So, you know, so I guess Amazon will have to force its way into doing what they've got to do in terms of what company policy is. But it is a hot topic, and it's something that if you make a mistake once, fine, learn from it. If you make it 2 or 3 times, you're forced to deal with it. Anybody want to close it out real quick?
I got what I said.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah, so I'm not going to say any more about what I said. I made my opinion exactly what it is, and we'll move on to the next topic, and that being Steve Kerr, who has agreed to a 2-year, $35 million contract extension with the Warriors. He's the highest paid coach in NBA history. Okay, Jacob, your thoughts?
No, I think he absolutely deserves it. I mean, 4 rings. Let's see, 4 rings and 7 total as a player too. No, 9 because of San Antonio. 9 total. He has had a very, very blessed career of every which way whatsoever. And it's the big thing about him is the only thing that's missing truly is he doesn't have his Wembanyama. He doesn't have that, which I could see him getting later once there is no Clay and there's no Steph and there's no all of that. I wonder if he'd want to be like Pop and be able to kind of teach these kids and be able to do something like this and build a team one more time. But no, absolutely he deserves this because, I mean, how many players, coaches, everything outside of Riley, he's right in that level. Riley's this year's going for ring number 10 between executive coach and player. And then you had coach with Phil Jackson at 11. And did you have all of those? So it's a rare breed between coach. 13 with Jackson because of the 2 rings. So it's very rare. And congratulations to him. He'll finish his career correctly.
Remember one thing about Kerr, though. There was a point at one time where he could have been given the New York Knicks job, and he decided to respectfully decline it. And obviously that turned out to be a great career move is what it did, because we all know that Phil Jackson was running things. And now up until Tom Thibodeau went out there and done a really good job in New York. He really has. But how many coaches did you go through that they were all looking at the triangle offense and nobody wanted to be bothered with it? If Phil Jackson wanted to do the triangle offense bad enough, he should have done the job himself. But he knows that he was devoid of talent. So,
well, here's another thing too with Phil Jackson. He did not want to go on the road. He wouldn't have minded going at home, like coaching at home, but he did not want to coach on the road. He had those hip problems, the health problems. He didn't want to do that, and they weren't going to allow that.
Yeah, but you know what, though? I'll tell you this right now. I'm not buying that. I'm not. Any guy he's smart enough to know, Jacob, and I'm really not going to buy that one at all. He didn't want to coach the garbage talent that he had. What did he have? Christos Porzingis, and who else did he bring in there? Think about it, Jacob.
Yeah.
So, JB Ellis, you've been away for a long time. So at this point in the show, okay, I have to go back to something that Fred Sanford would say. Are you crazy? Are you crazy? Yeah, no, have your fake heart attack, because I'm not hashtagging heart attack. Are you crazy? Jackson didn't want to coach him, so he brought everybody, his former players, Derek Fisher and all these people that couldn't do it? Seriously? No, Steve Kerr made the right career choice with Golden State. And you know what he actually did is he took the Greg Council route. And that took as much money as he could get in the NBA, like Craig Counsell did with the Cubs. So with that said, I'm going to transition this comment over to JB Ellis, who loves to do Chicago Cubs stuff. And do you see any parallels here, JB Ellis, between Steve Kerr and Craig Counsell?
Absolutely not. Steve Kerr, as much as I like him, I in my head, I'm seeing Allen Iverson. Instead of saying practice, he's saying Jackson. You're talking about the wrong Jackson. He rode the coattails of Mark Jackson, who built that team. And that's what got him to these championships. And he had everything there for him. If I gave you $1 million today, Scott, and said, now you're a millionaire, you didn't earn your money. You became a millionaire because I handed it to you. But with Steve Kerr, as far as his coaching, we don't know how good he really is. He was handed the keys to the kingdom with a team that was prefabricated for him. Does he deserve to get paid? Yes, because they keep winning. Good for him. And Kevin Durant, who has no what's the word I want to use for Kevin Durant? No pride when he had to go try and win a championship, and join everybody else. Where as much as I dislike LeBron, at least he went out on his own and recruited his guys and went to a different team to try and win a championship and started all over, and I have no love for LeBron, and I can say that. But, Steve Kerr hasn't had any trials or tribulations to prove that he's a good coach. Craig Counsell, on the other hand, he's won in Milwaukee. He took the Chicago job, makes good money. He's earned his pay. We'll see what he can do in Chicago. I think he'll do a decent job. But Steve Kerr, until he does something beyond having Steph, Clay, and the rest of that core nucleus there, he's just riding Mark Jackson's coattails. And, it's a shame that former St. John's alum Mark Jackson can't get a job right now coaching.
Hey,
yeah, you know what,
JB.
Joe? I am so glad. Okay, Jacob, I'll turn to you in a moment, but Joe's on to something here, okay? That Mark Jackson, to me, that you brought his name up. I view him as a Rodney Dangerfield of coaches. He never got any respect for turning Steph Curry into the guard that he turned out to be. Remember, lots of times teams make mistakes on star players. Mark Jackson made sure that Steph Curry didn't get off track and didn't get derailed. So all Steve Kerr had to do was inherit him and don't screw it up. And why he never got a head coaching job, and I'll tell you, why the Detroit Pistons never hired him is anybody's guess. He could have made them look respectable. So I wish and pray, and I met Mark Jackson one time, though, JB, when he was with the Indiana Pacers, one of the nicest guys you could ever meet. When I needed to talk to him, more than that, cooperative. Of course, what do you think? He was great. He was a great announcer, too, and he had that gig for a while. But why the NBA is so darn stupid now, and he doesn't get another opportunity, boggles my mind. But I am so glad, Joe, that you brought his name up. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Steve Kerr's done a pretty good job. But when you're surrounded with a lot of talent, you can do that. But people in Detroit will realize when Sparky Anderson, took over for Ralph Houck back in Detroit, Sparky had to make some fine-tune improvements, but Ralph Houck did the dirty work for him so that Sparky Anderson could win that championship. So, again, it depends on the situation for what you inherit and all the circumstance around it. All right, Jacob, you want to add something to this?
Real quickly, JB, that you're correct on that. What he took Mark Jackson's team. But remember this part: Doc Rivers has 4 prefabricated the teams and won 1 ring.
Oh, Jacob, I agree with you. I'm not saying Steve Kerr's a bad coach.
Yeah,
that's
it's hard to win. I'm just saying,
that I'm not taking anything away from Steve Kerr. I'm just saying I need to see him in a second situation or after the team is rebuilt for him to do it again. So like Greg Popovich done it multiple times.
Yeah,
you can't question that he is a great coach. Steve Kerr, he's had this core now since he started. Now they're starting to age, so now we're starting to see what he can and can't do. Does he deserve it? Yeah, he's been there throughout the helm. He should get paid. I'm not questioning that, but the beginning part of the success, I can't sit here and give him full credit for.
Yeah, but bear in mind one thing about that extension, Joe, and George will get to you in a moment. It's only 2 years, and not like it's 5. So we'll find out how it all plays out. Back to the chat room, Candy. Why don't you go ahead and put a couple of these out? Kerr will coach the U.S. team at the Paris Olympics, and he said repeatedly his focus will be on coaching and not his unsettled contract situation. Well, it's settled now, so we don't have to worry about that. When he won his 500th game, February 15, he did so in 764 games. The fewest games to accomplish that mark. Well, we're going to make a comparison between, Jackson and and Kerr. We might as well just throw Doug Collins in the equation too. That he's the guy that did the dirty work for Phil Jackson, and Doug Collins didn't get anything for it. He got screwed in '72, and they didn't win the gold medal. So why don't we just put Doug Collins in the equation? And let me tell you, when Michael Jordan saw that Collins ended up leaving, he brought him over with Washington. So we might as well put Doug Collins in the equation. Although Doug did get other jobs, don't get me wrong, but Doug Collins to me is another underrated coach. All right. And George and I both work with Doug Collins, and we flip it over to George. Go ahead.
Well, I don't have too much to add. I mean, really, Kerr deserves the extension. He deserves the money. He's established himself very, very well as the architect of that team. And I know he's got Curry and Draymond Green and Klay Thompson and a bunch of other stars. But, he has done a remarkable job with them. I believe he's the 5th fastest coach in NBA history to win his 500th game, which came on February 15th of this year. And yeah, I'm glad that in the chat room that he pointed out that he's the Team USA national coach. I got nothing but good remarks, good thoughts about Kerr. I do understand, JB, what you're saying. If you saw him in another environment, another team, how would he perform? And he still may get that opportunity, maybe not. He might coach these last 2 years of his contract and say, I've had enough. We don't know. But I do know is that he kept that team together, and especially with one of the troublemakers, Draymond Green, former Michigan State Spartan, he's had some tough circumstances there too. Now they've had some up and down. Every team has ups and downs. But I think Kerr's been really good, and I rank him pretty high up there as far as the coaches that I appreciate having in the NBA.
Well, I'd still like to figure out what Mark Jackson did that was so bad that would have not enabled him to get another head coaching job. And for that matter, he was let go by the Knicks recently. So to me, there's a lot of unanswered questions surrounding Mark Jackson. Hopefully we'll have answers too. But I want to continue to move on a little bit. A disturbing trend that I'm really not too happy about. I'm sure neither are you. There's the court storming fans that we're starting to see around college basketball. This is a problem that's really starting to get out of control. We talked about it last week on Pundit where I had a parting shot. Pundits views what we have. But now I'm going to give the entire crew an opportunity to talk about it. I think it stinks and it has to stop. That's all I'm going to say about it. Joe Ellis, go from there.
Listen, it's been part of the college tradition for years. It's the school's fault for not having security to get these athletes off the court ASAP. You're not going to stop, these 19, 20, 21-year-old kids when you win a huge game from storming the court. So the school has to do the next best thing, which is have a security team that's there just to get these athletes off the court. It's very simple because, obviously you see that they've implemented fines. I believe the SEC has ridiculous fines for when it happens in football and basketball. It still doesn't stop it because these kids are so excited that, when you go to these schools, you live, breathe, and die with these schools. We're not talking, it's, whatever school in whatever place. These are big institutions with hundreds of thousands of students and, the alma maters that are huge. And these games are big rivalries. They've been going on for years. So this is like the biggest thing that they've seen, and it's an exciting thing, and they want to storm the court. It's a stupid thing. I don't understand why you want to do it, but it's whoever the home team's job is to get the athletes off the court, because that this is a possibility. This has been going on. So it's your job to ensure the safety of the athletes. It's plain and simple.
Yeah, it's plain and simple, but don't tell that to the Duke Blue Devils who saw a guy get injured on the court and they're forced to deal with it, right, Joe? I mean, this is the kind of thing where when a guy gets hurt, okay, it's another story. Isn't that, as much as you want to say it's plain and simple, the reality is when you have injuries and you have too many people in a situation like that, it's one of those things that has to be addressed. But I don't think anybody knows which way to do it. Well, you know what? What does the PA announcer, Joe, tell them nobody's allowed to come on, and then you have to have more police? I mean, it's obviously a disturbing trend, and now it's starting to get more media attention. Does it take us, Joe, to have more media attention where these schools finally go out there and tell you it has to be dealt with? Any more or less than I can characterize, well, the Washington Redskins were a great nickname until the Indians got upset about it, right? And all of a sudden it wasn't any good. But the reality was Daniel Snyder, they didn't like him, so they didn't like the Redskins. But how much you want to bet? All that. And why don't we go ahead and bring on Rafael Esparza? And I'd like to have him talk about this one day. Okay, how much is Rafael Esparza going to go out there and put the odds are that the Washington Redskins are going to re-exist, although they stand a better chance to re-exist before the Montreal Expos? Kidding. I don't know what's happening in Canada, at least in Montreal, but we'll leave it at that. But the reality of the situation is there has to be a meaningful resolution. And when you see a player get hurt, okay, it's one thing. We talk about fans, you don't know how much alcohol they're consuming, right? But this is what happens if this guy that got hurt for too is out for an extended period of time. One of your better players, and all of a sudden your road to the Final Four gets a little bit more difficult, doesn't it, Joe?
Well, I agree. That's why it's up to the school that's hosting the game to protect the athletes on both sides, not just, the away side or the home side. It's their responsibility to have security. You're not going to stop the whatever 5,000 to 10,000 people that are in the on-campus arena that are mostly students from storming the court. It's not going to happen unless you're tear gassing the kids, and I don't see that happening.
I wish in some cases.
They are very excited about playing these rivalry games and winning. So the only way to stop it is, okay, the game is over. There's a security staff that handles the athletes and gets them off the court right away. Is it the best answer? No, but you're not going to stop it. It continues to happen. Unless you want to do what New York did. If you look at the World Series and the playoffs from 95 on. So remember when baseball, everyone used to storm the field after a playoff victory, series victory. New York, they started putting horses and, cops on horses, and the whole field was surrounded with cops on horses. You want to start doing that? You want to get crazy? It's not going to happen in Wake Forest. It's not going to happen in Alabama. What's going to happen is nothing, because this has been going on for how long? And unfortunately, this poor kid got hurt. He hurt his knee, and it could mess up his whole career. It's not acceptable. The way to fix it is to get him off the court. The home team is responsible for the security. They need to get both sets of teams, both sets of players off the court ASAP in a situation like that.
Right, and you know darn well that the conferences and the NCAA aren't going to do anything. In fact, the more I see the NCAA, they're becoming more powerless by the day with all the developments, but that'll be for another day and another time. All right, I'll flip it over to Jacob.
There's one big difference now than because we've been storming courts, doing all that stuff for years. You saw Celtics do that and all that kind of stuff. There's one big difference now. You know what that is?
Right.
Yes. Every idiot has to hold one and show the world. It's up in the air. They have to do that. And then you want to know who gets hurt? Not just that kid, Caitlin Clark. Idiot was holding the dang thing and knocks her right in the nose with the elbow. He had to hold the phone. That's what they had to do. And then there's a billion of them with phones in their hand. They can't just have it in their memory. Everybody has to see. And then you want to know what it is? Because they're not paying attention. People are getting hurt. Because we've had court storming, but people were using their eyes. Right. They were using their eyes when they were paying attention and everything like that. And yeah, we've seen the little thing of when they won in 84, the Celtics won in 84, and then Bird had to run off the court before he got killed and doing all that stuff. But 100% of people, because there were no phones at the time doing that, 100% of people had their eyes where they were going. Now you have some idiots. Everybody has to look at the stuff. And they're not paying attention, and people get hurt. And that's where the problem lies when you're having this court storming now, is because idiots aren't paying attention. So I don't know what they're going to decide on something like this, but I would just love to have these kids for once in their life, just have this in their memory banks instead of using their phone. And I have to have the phone. I'll admit this. We all have to have the phone now. It's our lives. But just using your memory banks for once in your lives instead of having that thing 24/7.
Yeah, and I'll give you 4 words that describe that. Okay, you ready for that, Jacob? Don't hold your
breath.
breath. Okay, because not only we talk about court storming, what about what happens on the field? Anybody outside of George and I are alive to understand what happened to Cal and Stafford when they had that ban on the field? I mean, you know, it gets dangerous whether you're on a big football field or whether you're on a court. Either way, you're susceptible to injury when you have a running back or whatever trying to run through the band, looking to think you know where the end zone. I think when the New England Patriots were playing the Miami Dolphins many years ago in the snowplow game, at least you could find the end zone somewhere along the line when you got through the snow. See, Joe Ellis, here's the thing, man. You're away for 4 weeks, okay? You don't realize that you got a raging bull here on this show who really loves to use his sports exchange to really turn it loose, as Chris Berman would say. But the amazing part about when we talk about these specific topics is us people in the media are trying to bring them to light. And even though we're trying to figure out if there's any solutions or not, right? Are they really? Or even if we're trying to make them awareness, what have I always told you guys? It's our job to entertain and inform, right? And educate, okay? And that's what we're supposed to do. But who's to say that anybody's going to listen to us anyways? It doesn't really matter unless these things go viral with a 1-minute clip. But the reality of the situation, this stuff has to stop, whether it's on the court or on the field. All right, George?
Well, yeah, it has to stop. I mean, it's gotten ridiculous. It's got out of hand. We've seen it before in football for years and years. It's not as prevalent. I think a little less prevalent in the college football games as I remember growing up when it was much more commonplace. But it's a dangerous act. It is dangerous, and the students have to be told that it can't not be acceptable. The ACC did have a media teleconference on Monday, and they're definitely talking to each other. The commissioners of the various conferences, they mentioned the Big Ten and the Big 12, the Big South, Conference USA, a whole bunch of conferences. Recently were polled, I think, by ESPN, and they said that this is a big priority. The homeschool's responsibility for court storming, and that could be subjected to fines, as we know and we've heard already. But yeah, the athletes are in danger. I like your idea, Joe. I mean, I hope that could be worked out that way, where there's an escort. Don't forget the men in the zebra too. The referees, the officials have to be protected as well, because there's lots of crazy stuff going on when the call doesn't go your way. So we haven't seen anything on this level as far as the officials getting attacked, but it could happen. And so the security measures, I think the NBA's got to have at least, I think it was 3 uniformed undercover, I don't know if they're police or retired policemen, escorting the officials out of the NBA and into the court. But that's a little different. But yeah, the conferences, everybody's got to work this out. This has to be settled. They have to make improvements, and this crap's got to stop. No question about it.
Yeah, it's a shame, though, that it takes something like this. I'll remember a long time ago that a player that gets injured here by Duke, and like J.B. Ellis said, you hope it doesn't become a career ender. But, we have to learn from adversity. And when Dale Earnhardt was killed, NASCAR finally woke up and decided to have the Hans device and then padded walls. And it's unfortunately that we have to learn the hard way. We really do. And, and again, like Joe has been saying all along, the schools have to regulate it to the best of their ability. We'll just see if anybody can use the Duke situation and try to get behind it. Every one of you guys are making valid points. It really are. But unfortunately, it's a situation which now, because of an injury to a student, this is starting to get a lot more heightened attention than it ever had in the past. And our responsibility is to address it. Well, let's talk about a nicer subject, okay? And we're going to talk about the National Hockey League players will be allowed to participate in the 2026 and 2030 Winter Olympics. All right, Joe, some thoughts.
It's hockey. Does anyone watch hockey? No, seriously though, it's great. I mean, I prefer when amateurs play. I'd rather see that than the professionals actually be in the Olympics. I'm not a fan of the Dream Team and all these different NBA guys that play for all these different countries. Even if they beat the U.S., it still doesn't excite me. I like seeing the amateurs. It's the Olympics. Same thing with the NHL. And, I don't think it's done much to draw viewership to the sport. So for me, I'm anti, good for them because I know that they all want to play for their country. It's it's an honor to do it. So I'm happy for them. But overall, I'm against the whole thing with pros playing.
Okay, no, that's fair. And for many, many, many years, and when we had the Olympics, you always had and I like to refer to as basketball. The Miracle on Ice was one of those situations, which probably, I'll tell you what, when you look at the American-born coaches that are winning, like the John Tortorella's and all these great players like Patrick Kane, and I know the list goes on and on. Now you've seen United States hockey grow significantly. But I'll tell you, I remember years ago, back in the 70s, a lot of the pro college guys were way better than the world until they caught up with us, and then we had to go to the Dream Team format. But the one thing that George Eichhorn and I can both say is, being from the Metro Detroit area, George, you got to tell the audience about, the Team Canada versus the Russians and how the Summit Series and all those really, you got a lot of these guys playing, which really talked about worldwide growth. It's, a lot of our audience may not be familiar with it if they're younger.
Yeah, what Scott's referring to, obviously you had the Team Canada, the Team USA, Team Russia or Soviet Union at the time, and you had these series called the Canada Cup, and a lot of those games were played around the holidays. As I recall, we have an advantage here in metropolitan Detroit of being able to watch the Windsor, Ontario station because we're right across the river from Canada. So we were able to see a lot of games that especially the Americans never saw because Hockey Night in Canada reigned supreme and covered all these games. But there was a time when it was really, really a big deal with the international competition. And I think that's what Gary Bettman and the players are trying to get back to. The problem is that so many of those Europeans obviously have come over to the United States and played in the NHL or in Canada in the NHL. So you don't have that fierce competition and rivalry among the nationalities as you once did. But that being said, I think it's important for the NHL to still support the Olympics and to still be able to play there. I mean, I have been fortunate to see the Miracle on Ice. I was one of 10,000, 11,000 fans that was lucky to have a ticket to that game. And there was no greater excitement. There's no greater sporting event that I've ever covered or attended in my life. Obviously, the Miracle on Ice was remarkable. We just had another anniversary of that. So I think it's important. I do agree with what you said, JB, though, that ideally you would like the kids that are coming up and haven't made the pros yet to perform. But I think those days are behind us. I don't think we're going to return to that, at least not for this. Maybe in baseball for the Olympics, but in basketball and hockey seem to be going with the professionals, and it is what it is. But yeah, it means a lot. It means a lot to the diehard hockey fans and to the players and coaches themselves.
Well, I mean, JB Ellis' point, you just made it for him anyways. If we were able to win with our obviously our amateurs over the Russians, so is what you did. So you really made Joe's point. And nowadays, with hockey becoming more and more popular in the United States and everywhere else, below the NHL level, I can see where it would be much better to try to go to what Joe's talking about. I really do believe that. Let's keep the spirit of the competition being what it is. But then again, you have the World Baseball Classic, right, where everybody's motivated for that moment before spring training. And you're talking about the Miami area where I live in. We just had the Caribbean Series down here, and they put 36,000 people in that place over at Lone Depot Park. So out of the spirit of but nowadays, and if you look at the American players now at the amateur, they're much better. They really are. You got powerhouses in college hockey that can produce them. But, I understand Bettman's desire to support the Olympics, but I'm with you, Joe. I would rather see the amateurs play, but the play at the amateur level is much better these days than it ever was. So I don't think the next Miracle on Ice that you'll see will be such a miracle when you look at the much better coaching you've had at that level. You follow what I'm saying? You won't catch them off guard like you did in 80. So Jake, with that said, Jacob, go ahead.
Absolutely, and I was going to agree with you on this. Amateurs at this point of time now, like night before, for one thing, that was a perfect storm. The Miracle on Ice. You had the Russians. You had the Russians who had just beaten you like 10-3 or 11-3 or something the first game around. They were completely powerful. You know, you have Vladislav Tretiak. You have all of that kind of thing. You have all of the, you know, and then they pull him out in the second period and stuff like that. And then you get the United States has a chance. Perfect storm, perfect story. But here's the thing now. We have all of these. You've got high school players who are in such powerful, in anywhere. I mean, I'm watching my own team, my own alma mater, Quincy High School, 31-3, being this close to the state tournament bid. And
Right.
they've got 3 guys that are probably going to Division I. Never happens. It's a 40,000 person town. Doesn't happen. It's going to start happening and happening and happening. It doesn't seem to matter. You had Skylar Thompson, basically whose dad coached at Palmyra in this little bitty farm town. He's at the NFL. He played starter in a playoff game in the NFL. Everybody's better now, so you couldn't get the same story. But the bring the thing about this is the fact that it's just too much money to make amateurs go there now. There's just too much. Everything is competitive. Will people watch amateurs anymore? Will us 4 watch amateurs? Absolutely. Will the majority? I don't think so. It's just unfortunate, but they want the pros, they want the big boys, they want the names.
Right. All right, let me go over some other company information. We'll have the opportunity to do it. Everybody knows about it. If you're on YouTube, please press the red subscribe button, and then you can get all our shows by updating. But if you want to be a guest, feel free to participate in the chat room or send your topic idea self-ordertribune@gmail.com. If you want to advertise cost efficiently, give me a call at 954-304-4941. We do broadcast live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. Our website, done marvelously by Candy Ebling, is www.selfordertribune.com. Twitter /X @Tribune South. Candy Ebling also is a mastermind behind Sideline Sports website as well. So, Joe, why don't you read the Sideline Sports website really quickly?
SidelineSportsNet.com. SidelineSportsNet.com. We got
Okay,
net and .com in there. We got both, but we have one of the best websites because Candy designed it. Phenomenal. I love it every time I bring up the webpage. Unbelievable.
Woman's a jack of all trades and master of them all. I'm telling you. So, in my opinion, there aren't enough of her around. Don't I know? She's one of a kind. But anyway, she's behind the scenes producing the broadcast. And she's also turned out to be a pretty darn good editor when I write a book, okay? Which is, by the way, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders, Old School Media versus New School Media, available on Kindle and Amazon. And hopefully down the road, we'll be able to add more down the road. But meanwhile, that's what it's all about. Sideline Sports and South Florida Tribune make an incredible 1-2 punch. So there you have it. So with that said, we got 2 more topics to get around, and don't worry. If you thought these first 4 were explosive, these next 2 should be pretty strong as well. We're going to talk about a little bit of baseball because we're dealing with baseball spring training. But before we deal with spring training, let's talk about what occurred before spring training, and that was the Baseball Hall of Fame class being announced. We know Jim Leland's going there, adrianbeltre, joemauer, and Todd Helton. Okay, Joe, why don't you give me your thoughts about this class?
You know, I actually thought that everyone that was picked actually deserves to be there, which is a nice feeling. You know, I love Joemauer's career. He played in Minnesota, which probably is not the most exciting place to play, and people don't realize when you're in Minnesota who you are because a lot of people don't pay attention to the Twins. But he was a really good catcher and then became a first baseman after he got hurt. Jim Leland was a great manager for years. You know, he was great in Detroit, great in Pittsburgh. I just love the guy. I wish the Yankees would have hired him, and he would have been a Yankee manager, but he probably got fired like 30 times by Steinbrenner. He seemed like that type. You know, he'd go back at the boss. Who else was there? I got those two. What are the other two?
Well, you got Adrian Beltre and Todd Helton. I don't think you mentioned either thing about those
Yeah.
two. So go ahead.
Both of those guys were really good. I'm not as excited about either one of them. Beltre had a long, illustrious career, did everything well. You know, longevity definitely played a big part of what he did. And he was a really good player. And Helton, other guy, didn't really excite me, but I can see why he's in the Hall of Fame. He's a phenomenal player. You know, I don't have to like him for them to be good. I didn't like Larry Bird either. So every once in a while, I don't like somebody that's phenomenal.
Well, you know, it's amazing, though, Joe, many years ago, I was covering the Cactus League. I had the opportunity to talk to Todd Helton, one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. And you got to remember, though, the thing I like about Mauer and Helton is they played their entire career in one city. So you don't see that a lot. We all know that Leland's won everywhere he went except Colorado one year. That playing at Coors Field is enough to make anybody's stomach turn with that thin air. And Adrian Beltre got in with the first ballot. So what else do I have to say about that? All right, Jacob.
I love all four of them. It's like, as far as Todd Helton, it doesn't sound exciting, but there are men and women in all sports that don't have the excitement factor, quote unquote. They're just the consistent. They're just the consistency type. They're there every day. Go there and and do your job and hit well and play defense and do. And you know something? They don't get a lot of press and they don't get a lot of stuff, but I'll tell you this, when it comes down to it, the fans love them and they get to that whole situation. But I will tell you this, when I'd say about 10 some odd years ago or so, I was saying that the Hall of Fame was going to have to change its mind on Clemens and Bonds and all of them, just because you run out of names. You run out of people, then you got to make money somehow. But so far, they're making it. They're making it work without, these guys were all-time greats with or without theirs, without their problems with the PEDs and all that kind of stuff. One all-time great players. Baseball wants to make an example to stay clean and be able to do all this. So I was thinking they're not going to be able to keep this for long, but so far they are.
All right. Well, I should point out, folks, that everything I just spoke about here, if you look down at the bottom at our ticker, you can also see a lot of it visible there. So if you're in front of your computers, whether it's Sideline Sports website, ours, as well as to get my book and the YouTube information, you can jot that down. And if you want updates on everybody, Sideline Sports has a YouTube channel as well to complement their website. So everything that we have on there, you can see it. And of course, I've read it a few times. One more topic I want to get to, and that's this. And this one's going to appear.
What about George?
Lesson from the Microphone, part 2. And that's why I've mentioned it now for the second time. George, before I do that, though, I'm going to let you go ahead and talk about these 4 guys. And then I'm going to go ahead and get to it. All right?
All right. So, I'm not surprised by any one of them. Clearly, Jim Leyland has a lot of good friendships and a lot of good networking still in the game today. He is in a paid position for the Detroit Tigers as a consultant. And let's face it, he loves the sport and he is passionate about it, taking nothing away to Cito Gaston or Lou Piniella or any of the other managers that were up on the ballot this year. I think Davey Johnson, too. They're all deserving. But Leyland just had he's got that special connection to the guys still playing the game, the managers, the coaches, and the players. As far as the Helton, I think he deserved it. Played his whole career, like Scott said, in Colorado. And there's a lot of people in the Hall of Fame that played in that same kind of vein. When you think about Mickey Mantle, Derek Jeter, Lou Gehrig, Mario Rivera, there are so many of them that played their whole career with one team, and baseball writers seem to like that a lot too. And the other 2, I think, were deserving too. Beltre and who's the other one I'm missing?
Well, you got Beltre, Mauer, Helton, and Leyland.
Oh, and Mauer. Yeah. Well, Mauer, of course, I got a chance to see a lot in Detroit because he killed the Tigers with his bat and with his glove. So, those guys were all deserving. I think it's a great class for 2024. So hats off to the 4 of them. Thank you.
Yeah, I guess when you face a team 18 times a year, you get sick and tired of them after a while. I'm glad I'm in Major League Baseball, but it had made it 12 so you can incorporate interleague play all year round, which will be for another day. Now, the last topic I'm going to mention, which will appear in Lessons from the Microphone Part 2, is going to be the largest streaming deals in live sports and entertainment. Prime Video. Boy, I wonder where we're going back to that one again, right? Richard Sherman? My goodness. All right. Well, anyways, Thursday Night Football is $1.2 billion annually. MLS season pass, get this one. I didn't even expect to see this on there, but it's interesting. It's $250 million annually. Not bad for MLS. And here's a sport catching on. And when I saw that number, I was pleasantly surprised that the MLS is doing that well. And now you have YouTube TV, which is Sunday ticket, $2 billion annually. That one doesn't surprise anybody. And here's one that Denzel and Jacob should take a little pride. I don't know where you're going with this one, but WWE Raw, $500 million annually. Don't you do something like that with the rope broadcast? I don't even know. I mean,
yeah, Top Rope Talk. Yeah, we'll definitely talk about it next week. That's for sure.
$500 million annually. So I guess the easiest way I'm going to do, Joe, is which one surprises you and what doesn't surprise you, Joe?
So I would have thought MLS should have been a little bit more. You know, Apple TV's done a great job supporting MLS. They were a huge part in making the big move over the last year, bringing Messi down to Inter Miami. So I would have thought that was a little bit more, but they contributed with that. So I guess that's kind of why it's like that. You know, it's not surprising to see all these different streaming platforms paying all this money. Not a fan, hate streaming, miss the old broadcast days. Wish instead of going to a streaming platform, wish they'd go for a pay-per-view platform where if I want to watch the game, I can pay $10, $5, whatever amount they decide. And if I want to watch Detroit versus Cincinnati, I press the buy button. If I want to watch the Yankees versus the Dodgers, I press the buy button. I can care less about Amazon. I don't like watching Thursday Night Football. They give them bad games anyway, and I hope they continue to be bad. WWE, I think what they're doing is genius, doing more streaming. I think it fits their business model, and it makes a lot of money for everybody. But yeah, I would say, you know, probably I thought MLS would have been a bit more.
Yeah, Apple TV. Okay, I guess I didn't see that on here, but maybe I'm missing it somewhere. MLS season pass, is that produced by Apple TV? Maybe I'm missing something. Oh, it is. Okay, that's why you brought it up. Okay, I wasn't sure. So thanks for clarity on that. Okay, with that said, Jacob, go ahead.
Oh, the only shock I see is I would have thought MLS would be a teensy bit lower and build up to the next year. And they're starting to build up fast. WWE doesn't surprise me an ounce, especially with their merger with, calling it TKO with the UFC. So all of their money, everything's going completely different. Really, you want to know where we're going to start seeing more and more over the next couple of years? Women's basketball, because like the Iowa, the B1G tournament is bound to have 100,000 tickets sold for their tournament. Last year, it's breaking their record of 47,000 last year.
Right.
And this is Caitlin Clark effect, but there's going to be more. You're going to start seeing this, and you watch to the point. I bet 5-10 years down the road, women's basketball gets their own. They're going to get their own streaming because of these type of things. And you're going to get more Caitlin Clarks. You're going to get more Angel Reeses. You're going to get more of everybody. And this is where there's going to be more money around, because guess what? You have plenty of male stars, plenty out there. They're going to be onto this thing. You're going to get women's stars now. You're going to add to the coffers with the women's stars. You're going to add to the coffers with like for instance, I'm going to say this: the shocking thing, like for Mac McClung being a 2-time dunk champion, it's not just like a star do this. You're adding stars to everything. So there's going to be more options for the stars with women, with smaller guys, with all this stuff. So there's more money out there.
Okay, George.
I think that, I agree with JB. I think that the MLS should have been a little bit higher. The WWE doesn't surprise me at all. It has a great following and is really good ratings hog. And then your last point, which you made, Jacob, I agree. I think the women's sports is just on the cusp now of really, really taking off. We've seen the WNBA on major networks, of course, ESPN, ABC. We've seen now Fox putting women's basketball in prime time. I never saw that before on one of the major over-the-air networks doing as many women's basketball. I mean, ESPN has been doing it for years, but now you see them on Fox, and I know that's part of the agreement that they signed with the Big Ten. And there's just in the Apple thing, I'm not with that at all. They're trying out like Major League Baseball at 12 noon or 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning. I don't know what the ratings are for that, but it can't be that good at that time of day on a Sunday. But all that being said, yeah, there's a lot of money out there, Scott, a lot of money for stream sports. Streaming sports was the future, and we know it's going to go gangbusters more and more in the future as well. So it's here to stay, definitely.
Well, the only thing I'll say about Apple TV is it destroyed the Pac-12.
Yeah.
Because that's what ended up getting the commissioner run out of there, and that's why 10 schools went elsewhere. So that shows you that when they're all talking streaming, everybody else is talking these big contracts. The Pac-12 is down to the Pac-2. That's number one. Number two, I don't have enough information to talk about the MLS, so I'm going to leave it alone. WWE, yeah, I understand. I grew up in an era where wrestling was fake, and I was dealing with Dick the Bruiser, Bobo Brazil, and all of a sudden we're dealing with a lot of this stuff. So I'm going to say that the $2 billion from YouTube TV with the NFL Sunday Ticket, to me, obviously, is powerful, and that's why DirecTV got run out of town. And Prime Video, I tell you what, I have a feeling for some reason or another it might go down a little further. But you know what? I'm going to go with Joe Ellis on this one. If it were me, okay, I would rather, but it wouldn't do this. The sports part won't be wanting to sponsor me after these comments. If I could buy my games individually, I'm not winning any friends there with the sports bars because they like to bring people in. That's why they're not selling the games individually. That's where you have a problem. But Joe, I see your point. I'd like to be able to sit here in my place with my wife and be able to watch the games, be able to buy the games individually. But you know what? Don't hold your breath.
They'd make so much more money if they did that, though. You realize if you pay $160 or $199 for the whole year MLB, right? If you charge me $10 a game, which is not an absurd amount, right? You don't think I'm going to watch more than 20 games throughout the whole year besides my home team?
Right. Well, I agree.
They would kill it. It's bad business.
Well, let's face the reality, Joe. If you want to live out of a hotel, go ahead and do that. Maybe you're lucky enough to find some place where you can buy these things like that. I've just never seen it done. I mean, they do it with movies, right? When you buy movies, you can buy the movie, right? Why wouldn't you take the same concept and turn it over to sports? There's only one sportscaster I ever knew that lived out of a hotel, but I'm not going to get into that specific individual because he's been paid tribute a couple of times. But with all due respect, okay, I'm with you, Joe. I would rather be able to buy the games at home, but the sports bars are making a killing. It's pretty hard to get away from that. But I'm not saying I disagree with you. But remember, Joe, there's perception and there's reality. And that's where we're at with this whole thing. But the perception is this is the sports exchange, and the reality is the four of us are all back and better than ever. So I don't have to sit here and debate it. All you have to do is comment, send us emails any way you want to talk about it. If you think I'm too loud, tell me something I haven't heard before. It doesn't make any difference anyways. I didn't go ahead and trademark Motor City Mild Mouth. Otherwise, the trademark would have gone through a lot quicker than Mad Mouth because they wouldn't have confused me with Ted Nugent anyways, Madman. But we'll leave that for another day for Detroiters to digest. But anyways, that does conclude this edition of the Sports Exchange. Joe, you have any parting shots or anything you want to get off your chest?
No, getting excited for the conference tournaments and college basketball, then March Madness, a couple more weeks. Looking forward to it. Now's when great time of year. I always love when the Super Bowl ends. We get to go right into college basketball, which goes right into baseball, and then we're right back at football with the NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs in between.
And Jacob, Cliff Notes version.
Just really quickly, I've got mine. I brought up Quincy just that point. They are 5 games from the state title, and there is sectional finals coming up, 31-3 right now. So proud of them, and a lot of these guys are juniors, so they could do it again next year. I can't wait to see it.
Good. All right, George, what do you want to get off your chest?
Well, no, I'm just going to tell you that Hockey Town is back. The Red Wings have a 8-point lead in the wild card race over the New Jersey Devils, 64 points. The Wings have 72. Hockey's back in town, man. Watch out for the Red Wings. 6-game winning streak right now. And General Manager Steve Yzerman's done a great job, and Newsy, the coach, has done a great job. So they've really picked up some of the momentum that they had years ago. Patrick Kane on board, just a tremendous DeBrincat. It's just a great team to watch. A lot of fun. Hockey is back in Detroit. I'll just leave it at that.
Man, I'll tell you what, I'm very proud of my alma mater, University of South Florida, who has a 13-game winning streak, and they're doing really well. And I'll tell you what, I'm also delighted with Florida Atlantic University Owls. I had a chance to see them a couple of weeks ago, but both programs are headed in the right direction. The only thing I'll wonder about is whether or not Dusty May is going to get a bigger job or whether he's going to stay at FAU. That's something we'll find out how it plays out. But Dusty's been great to work with, and the new coach at USF has been great. And I also had a recent conversation with Vice President of Athletics, Michael Kelly, that's on our YouTube channel. I'll be writing stories on both of those. So meanwhile, it's so great to have Joe Ellis back. And obviously and happy birthday, George, of course.
Happy birthday, George.
We don't really know when to celebrate. Well, actually, this year we do know when to celebrate it. It's every other year we don't know when to do it.
I finally get one, yes.
Yeah, there you go.
So, George, are you going to go climb the mountains for your birthday?
Yeah, right.
They don't have any in Detroit, but we're sorry. But that's it, George. Let's let everybody know how they can get a hold of you.
All right. The easiest way to find me is on the South Florida Tribune website under the Motor City Tribune. You'll find my column there. At the end of my column, there's a link to one of the books that I wrote, which is Detroit Sports Broadcasting on the Air. You can reach me at gicorn@yahoo.com, reach me on LinkedIn, and reach me on Twitter at SandGSports99, and find me on the Sports Exchange and 108 Stitches and Pundits Pundit, Fire Up. A lot of great shows this network has, and happy to work with you guys again tonight.
Okay, Jacob.
I am Jake the Pundit on Twitter or X, Jake the Pundit 1 on TikTok. Also doing writing also on Reddit now, Jake the Pundit. Also, I'm also doing writing for South Florida Tribune and Sideline Sports, and I just did one today. You'll see it very soon.
Very good. And of course, just to let everybody know, on the network tomorrow, Pundits Pundit will be on at 8:00 Eastern time. So hope you can join us, myself, Jacob Christner, Denzel Snipes, and I believe we're going to have James Tatum joining the broadcast tomorrow. Joe Ellis, let everybody know they can reach you.
JB_ the program on X, Sideline Sports every Tuesday, 8:30. You know the usual places, maybe some more places before you know it. Sideline Sports, go to sidelinesportsnet.com, that great website, Candy Design. I love it. I love looking at it every day. But definitely check out the website, and we'll see you Tuesday at 8:30, and then back again on Wednesday, right here.
There you go. There you go. And just to give you the clip notes version of our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. And obviously, you want to find us on Twitter at Tribune South. Please subscribe to the South Florida Tribune YouTube channel. All you have to do is hit that red subscribe button. Boom, you're good. You'll get all the notifications. And last but not least, that book over in the right-hand corner happens to be my book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders, Old School Media versus New School Media, available on Kindle and Amazon. So we have a lot of great projects in the works. And again, you're watching this broadcast live on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and YouTube. So meanwhile, on behalf of Jacob Christner, JB Ellis, George Eichhorn, my name is Scott Morgan, Roth the Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us in this edition of the Sports Exchange. We will see you next Wednesday night, the same place, same time. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks for joining us.